first want to be clear, I'm not from Ferguson. I'm from Los Angeles, California. But I've been a part of what we now call the Ferguson uprisings that have impacted the entire United States of America, and I'm arguing the globe. So let's see, where do I start? Well, first, I just want to thank the panelists. This is probably my favorite panel. Yeah, I've been on a lot, but from the young folks, y'all starting us off and showing how you're fighting back and resisting. That was really powerful. To hearing Carol and Janet, we were just on a panel earlier today, but yeah, every time you all tell your stories, it just moves me to the core. And I know that your brother and I know that your nephew are grateful. I know that they're grateful for their legacy, that their legacy is they get to die in some form of dignity, given that the state has not allowed for that. So much of this fight is about a fight for our dignity. So much of this fight is about a fight for our power. So much of this fight is about wanting to get true justice. And there's a lot of questions about what that looks like. Does it mean the officers get convicted? Does it mean the government says, yes, we are running a police state and we allow for your loved ones to be murdered? It really depends on what each family member wants. It really depends on what the family says is justice. And most often, our families do not get justice. Most often, our families are left in misery and grief. And this form of activism, this form of campaigning, is a part of our resilience. It's a part of our resistance. It allows for us to live in an insane place and feel a little bit saner. There's two tales in the Black community. This is the Black Lives Matter tour, right? There's two tales in the Black community. There's a tale of great suffering, and there's a tale of resilience and resistance. We've heard the suffering, from forced migration to slavery, to high evictions, to homelessness, infant mortality, high prison population. This is the daily life for Black people who disproportionately face a significant amount of suffering both inside of this country but also inside of the U.S. But there's also this amazing form of resilience and resistance. And that's what I'm going to focus on mostly before we get to the audience. From uprisings to amazing inventors, to powerful artists and musicians, to folks who build healing medicines and are great doctors, to brilliant revolutionaries, all the way to Black Twitter. I want to take us through some of these uprisings in my lifetime, at least through the lens of America. In 1992, Rodney King is beaten, and Los Angeles has a major set of uprisings. I hear that you all call them riots, we call them uprisings. And folks in Los Angeles took to the streets. All we saw in mainstream media was looting. But actually what was happening was a significant amount of power that people were building. It was the first time in Los Angeles where the Black and the Latino community came together. It was the first time when there was a set of gang truces. We didn't have social media back then, so we couldn't tell our narrative. So mainstream media did. But I believe if we had Twitter, it probably would be similar as the Ferguson uprisings. Then I'm going to sort of fast forward to 2010, January 1st, Oscar Grant. He was coming home from a New Year's Eve party, just like many folks, right? Just coming home, heading to a party, normal day. He gets on the train, he's with his girlfriend, his friends. He sees someone that he's, they're enemies, and the person's yelling at him, and they're yelling back. The cops show up, they pull Oscar Grant off the train and two of his friends. Next thing you know, Oscar Grant is murdered in the back while he's handcuffed. Then there's uprisings. Oakland took to the streets. So much so that they had to fast-track the investigation. Usually it takes months and months. With Oscar Grant, people took to the streets and forced the Oakland Police Department to investigate the murder of Oscar Grant within that week. We have Trayvon Martin, who's murdered in 2011. George Zimmerman is acquitted in 2013. What did we do? We took to the streets. 2013, Renisha McBride is murdered. She's a young black woman. Many people might not know her story. She was in Detroit. She had gotten into a car accident. She got out of her car to go seek for help. She knocked on someone's door. They shot her through the door. Didn't even open the door, shot her face off. And the community came out and uprose. They said, you're not going to allow this young black woman's life to be devalued. You need to arrest. They weren't going to arrest him. They're saying that he was, we have a law called Stand Your Ground, and that he felt threatened. Although he didn't even open the door. How did he feel threatened? And now we have the murder of Mike Brown, 2014. Mark Brown is murdered. Everybody in the neighborhood witnesses it because it's in broad daylight. And then they leave him on the ground for 4.5 hours to bleed out without any medical care. And the community is increasingly growing weary. The community is yelling and shouting, you know, get him up off the ground. And at the same time, all of us are watching it on Twitter. We're watching it on social media because there isn't any mainstream media there as of yet. And people across St. Louis start showing up to Ferguson. The people of Ferguson do not have, end up staying outside. They don't go home. They wait till Mike Brown is lifted up off the ground and put in an unmarked vehicle. They host a vigil that night, and the police show up in riot gear. They show up with rubber bullets. They show up with tear gas. They show up with mace. But the people of Ferguson do not go home. And slowly but surely, the crowd grows. Folks across the country start to show up to Ferguson to stand side by side for the uprisings. And as the crowd grows, the police presence grows. And these are peaceful protests. Peaceful protests. Yet the response is to tear gas. The response is to rubber bullet the community. And we witnessed it over and over again. I remember every night a lot of my friends were out there before we got there, and they would update us on social media. There was a live streamer all the time, and we would all wait till midnight to see what was going to happen. And the Ferguson Police Department would do what they do and start tear gassing the community. 3 weeks later, myself and a good friend of mine, Darnell Moore, we co-organized a freedom ride. We said we can't sit in LA and New York any longer. We need to go. And I wanted to go the moment I saw it. But there was something that was saying, wait, let's be more organized. Let's get as many people as we can. And we organized over 600 people to the city of Ferguson in 15 days. We brought people to Ferguson to show up for protests. And most importantly, we brought folks to Ferguson because we wanted the world to know that Ferguson was not an aberration, that this was a national crisis. This was a national epidemic. Yeah. The statistic goes every 28 hours, a black person is murdered by law enforcement, security guard, or a vigilante. So we wanted to make sure that the media wasn't going to say, oh, this is just what happens in a small racist town. We wanted to say, actually, the whole damn system is guilty as hell. And this country is guilty. Yeah. And so after we did 2 days of being in Ferguson, it was about 18 cities, including Toronto, Canada, we all go back to our homes. But we didn't go back to our homes and sit there. A lot of journalists went on the ride, so we had a lot of writing that came out of that. And then pretty quickly afterwards, we started to gear up for a significant amount of direct action across the country. We wanted to elevate the story. And so I think it's important for folks to know how much direct action has happened. I think people outside of the state sort of see it as Ferguson, but it's not. It's the entire country is uprising. The entire country of the U.S. is on fire right now. Folks are not giving up. Folks, we're on a precipice of change in the U.S. And the hope is that this can become global. That we can, it could be so infectious that folks in the UK, that folks in other places could say, yes, we need to be a part of this Black Lives Matter movement. So we go to Ferguson, we go back home. A lot of us are plotting, trying to figure out how do we elevate this, how do we continue this. And then we do a week-long action in about 18 different cities. And each day we shut something down. So one of the biggest things that have come out of the protest is shutting shit down. So we shut freeways down in October. And then fast forward, Ferguson, they were supposed to put out the whether Darren Wilson was going to get indicted in October. So we were planning for a lot of people to go back to Ferguson in October, and they decided, okay, no, we're going to wait. But we said that we're going to still keep direct action for that weekend. So we had a Ferguson October event where thousands of people from across the country went back to Ferguson and they had one of their largest marches ever in the city of Ferguson. And then we did basically 4 days of shutting the city down, the entire city of St. Louis County. One of the most coordinated shutdowns we have ever done. Really amazing. I got to shut down a Walmart, got arrested with a bunch of my friends, and it was a powerful experience because it was this moment, if anyone's ever done direct action or civil disobedience, where you lose your fear, right? You lose your fear, and you say, this is what's necessary to make change at this moment in history. Fast forward, folks decide in different parts of the city that they're going to start taking on their own local police departments. And you start seeing these actions popping up across the country where people are occupying their police departments. In Los Angeles, we occupied the LAPD for 18 days. They had murdered a young black man named Ezell Ford 2 days after Mike Brown was murdered. When the autopsy came out in December, it showed that there was a muzzle mark in the back of Ezell Ford, meaning they shot him directly in the back. They pressed the gun up against his back. Ezell Ford had mental illness. He had a mental illness. They had known that. These officers knew him. And all they could say was Ezell was reaching for the gun. And so they decided to shoot him. When the autopsy came back, we saw that there was a muzzle mark. We saw that it was homicide. And folks in the Black Lives Matter LA chapter decided, well, we are going to go meet with the chief of police, and if he doesn't meet with us, we're going to occupy his building until he does. We pay the taxes.